every running back for week 4, start or sit right here. Please make sure you drop a like and subscribe. Let's get into Seattle versus Arizona. This one's going to be tonight. And really, you've got Zach Charbonnet coming back. He was a full practice participant on Monday. In a short week, that typically means he's going to play. Now, in terms of these Seahawks running backs, what you've seen so far is Kenneth Walker has been the more productive back this season. But an interesting note, when you're looking at their expected fantasy points versus their actual fantasy points over the season, Kenneth Walker has been way overachieving what he would expect to get based on the volume he's been getting, and Zach Charbonnet has actually been a decent underachiever. And Zach Charbonnet does continue, when these guys are both on the field, to get the relevant volume and continues to get more touches than Kenneth Walker does. But Kenneth Walker has been more productive. And so because of that, Kenneth Walker is going to go in the C tier this week for us. It's a decent matchup against Arizona. Arizona's been fine against the run this year, but nothing to move these guys up or down about. And then we'll put Zach Charbonnet in the D tier. Charbonnet is going to be a meh for us. I mean, Kenneth Walker, I think you have to start at this point. Charbonnet, I mean, look, I need to see the volume, and I need to see him produce consistently. We just haven't seen it yet. Not to mention you have Charbonnet coming back from an injury, and so that's probably going to hinder him a little bit. So we'll go start for Kenneth Walker, meh for Zach Charbonnet in the C and D tier respectively. And then on the Arizona side of the ball, welcome Trey Benson. He is a must-start in your lineup this week, and we already have him in the B tier. If you look at his Vegas lines from what he's expected to do in his first week as a starter, they're pretty high, actually. I mean, they translate to 15-plus fantasy points. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see that with the way they were using James Conner. I don't think Amari DeMarcado is somebody you're starting. We don't even have him ranked on here. But Trey Benson is a must-start in his first week as the starter. We're going to put him in the B tier against the Seattle defense that's average against the run. Trey Benson, we're going to see what he's made up this week. Maybe it's going to be his coming out party.
So next matchup we're going to have here is Minnesota and Pittsburgh. This is the Ireland game. I think they're playing this one in Dublin. We got Jordan Mason as a running back 1 for Minnesota, and we're going to have him in the B tier. I mean, he had an awesome showing against Cincinnati, granted. Like, this is not going to be a Cincinnati-esque matchup, I don't think, but still 23 points. Got bell cow level carries, was more efficient than we'd seen in the first 2 weeks with Aaron Jones. He got a couple of touchdowns. He's getting all the goal line carries, all the goal line work there as well. I think that really just raises his floor for the foreseeable future. So that merits us ranking him pretty high. Very optimistic that Mason's going to have a good week. No one behind him on the Minnesota side of the ball is going to be relevant at all. Xavier Scott is nothing. And then on Pittsburgh's side, we've got Jaylen Warren, who just continues to be so consistent. And again, when you're looking at the production that Minnesota allows for running backs, it's kind of middle of the road, honestly. And Jaylen Warren is just kind of a middle of the road producing running back that's a pretty comfortable flex option. So we're going to rank him in the D tier. He doesn't have the ceiling that someone like Jordan Mason does, but he's going to be fine there. I do want to note Kenneth Gainwell. The fact that we're even ranking Kenneth Gainwell is, I guess we're just giving him his respect for getting that touchdown, that goal line carry that he got against New England in week 3. So have to show him his respect there, but his snap share actually has been going down incrementally since week 1, and Jaylen Warren's has been going up. So that is something to keep an eye on with Warren. He may be on an upward trajectory when you're talking about the tiers with him and where he's going to settle, I think, for the rest of the year.
The Washington-Atlanta matchup is a matchup of 2 pretty good rushing defenses, and so let's talk about this. On the Washington side of the ball, you've got Atlanta. They've allowed the 5th least amount of points to running backs this year. The problem with this Washington running back room right now is it's really a mixed bag, because you have Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, who had 40% snap share last week. He had 8 attempts, but he had a touchdown, and so he had 10 points, right? You had Jeremy McNichols in that offense last week, 26% snap share, so less than Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, but 4 attempts for 78 yards and a touchdown. He obviously had a pretty big play in that offense. And then Chris Rodriguez, also playing in that offense, 38% snap share, 11 attempts for Chris Rodriguez, no touchdowns, so he only gets 4 points. But as you can see, they're pretty much splitting that backfield 3 ways, in almost 3 even ways. And so who do you start there is the question. I think the answer for me in a tough matchup, in a matchup where you're going against a top 5 rushing defense so far, you've got a 3-way split in that backfield. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt's going to be a meh at best for us this week, and so I'm not really excited about starting him. We've got him in the F tier, and maybe you start him if you need to. A lot of you guys may need to at this point with injuries and the other factors. So I'm going to say meh for him. For Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, we're going to put them in the H tier. So we're still going to put them behind, because we do think overall Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt has more ceiling than these 2 guys. But ultimately, they're not getting reliable enough snap share or production to start. The only reason McNichols had 13.8 points last week is because he had that long run, that long touchdown run, a 60-yard touchdown run that he had. And so, realistically, you don't really want to start any of these guys. I mean, it's tough to start them against any matchup. But against Atlanta, I would recommend staying away from that backfield if you can until we figure out what the snap share is going to look like. Now, on the Atlanta side of the ball, it's pretty cut and dry here because even though it's a very tough matchup, Washington has allowed the second least amount of points to running backs this year so far. So this is a tough matchup for Bijan. And also Bijan coming off of a week where we really haven't seen him super produce since, week 1 where he had 24. He had 19 points in week 2, but then 16 points on 80% snap share in week 3, 13 carries against Carolina, and then also had 6 targets. So the target volume continues to kind of elevate his floor. He's a running back 5 so far. It is a tough matchup for Bijan, but it's Bijan, so you got to start him. You're not starting Algier because of the tough matchup. You can't really start a running back 2 in this matchup. So we've got Bijan Robinson in the S tier, and then we're going to have Tyler Algier down in the J tier. Again, start for Bijan. For Tyler Algier, you're not putting him in your lineups this week.
So New Orleans and Buffalo is probably not going to be a game that you're going to be excited to watch this week, but we do expect a really, really good day from James Cook. He's already moved up, I think, consistently at this point into our A tier. He's been one of the most consistently productive running backs to date so far, and he's just in such a great situation that he's been able to continue to capitalize on over the last couple of years, and it just looks like the best version of him, honestly, that we've ever seen. He's going to be great. Expect a really big day against New Orleans. Walker produced and had a great day against New Orleans last week, so Cook should do really, really well. And then on the flip side, you've got Alvin Kamara, who we've had to move down a couple of tiers. Number one, because in the C tier for Kamara this week going up against Buffalo, that's a tougher matchup than what you've seen against like Arizona, San Fran, and Seattle the last couple of weeks. And he's kind of been pedestrian, honestly, to start the season. 13, 16, and 6. The usage is there. The carries are there. 11, 21, and 18 carries. But anyone who watches that offense, you got to admit, it is truly awful for anyone there, and it does severely cap their ceiling. I do expect in the future that Alvin Kamara is going to have some very productive days, and I would hope that it's against Buffalo. We're just going to be conservative this week, and you obviously have to start Alvin Kamara. You have to flex him for sure, but I don't think that he's going to blow your socks off this week. I would probably bet on like week 5 being the case against the Giants. The
Cleveland-Detroit game, obviously Cleveland has had the best defense against running backs so far this year, and so for the Detroit side of the ball, you starting Jahmyr Gibbs. You're coming off of a game where both of these guys on Monday Night Football had absolutely dynamite games and pretty much dominated this game start to finish. Jahmyr Gibbs had 26 points on 22 carries and 6 targets in this game, and then Monty also got his own 29 points, 12 attempts for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. The fact that these guys combine for 55 points, that is absolutely insane.
It's like we've seen this before.
It's almost like we've seen it before. That being said, it is going to be tough to start David Montgomery in this game. He is going to be a meh for us because, again, this is a Cleveland defense that has been so good, so effective against running backs this year in fantasy football. You can't ignore the matchup, and so he's going to be a meh. If you have some other flex options at wide receiver, you're probably going to go that way instead of David Montgomery. But Jahmyr Gibbs, you obviously have to start. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be in the A tier instead of the S tier for us this week because it is the toughest matchup that you could have, and it's the toughest matchup they'll have all season from a running back perspective. Now, jumping up to Cleveland. Quinshawn is going to be in the B tier for us. He continues to climb up these ranks. He is a start. Detroit has actually allowed the 8th least amount of points to running backs this year, but Quinshawn played the Green Bay Packers defense last week and did just fine, held his own, and also got 18 carries in that offense. It's not going to change this week with Quinshawn Judkins, and he's somebody that you're putting now in your flex spots every week. He's a start for us in the B tier. Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Jerome Ford in the J tier because he got the targets there last week. He looks like the receiving back there. Dylan Sampson didn't really get anything, and so Sampson at this point is probably droppable in most formats. Obviously, you run the risk that one of these guys in front of him gets hurt, but even if he does, Jerome Ford's not startable even in that role, and so Dylan Sampson, if he were to come into that Jerome Ford role, one thing that we missed on, I thought Dylan Sampson would maintain that role, and they've actually given it to Jerome Ford. I thought it would be Sampson.
I thought it would be Sampson.
So, Sampson at this point we don't have ranked, but again, Quinshawn in the B tier, Jerome Ford in the J tier, and again, a tougher matchup on both sides of the ball, but especially for Detroit, it's going to make David Montgomery a shakier flex option for this week in fantasy football.
Tennessee and Houston probably going to be another ugly day for both of these running backs as well. Tony Pollard is touchdown or bust. You saw that last week against the Colts. He salvaged his day with 16 carries, got the touchdown, which got him up to 13 points when he was in single digits with 18 and 20 points against Denver and LA to start the year. This is going to be a shaky start, but it is a start that I think we're going to be recommending as long as he gets this opportunity and can show a decent floor of 8 to 12 points. He will be in the D tier, though. I don't think he has the ceiling that a lot of these other bell cow running backs do across the league in an offense that just looks so lackluster and so poor right now. And behind him, Julius Chestnut is nothing. We don't even have him ranked. Nick Chubb is going to be a meh this week in the F tier. He came back down to earth last week after a nice showing against Tampa in week 2, another 7-pointer against Jacksonville. And his volume went down on the ground, but his snap share remained the same. I think the reason being they were just down for a lot of the game. And yeah, it was a one-possession game, but they couldn't get anything going at all. They had to get some big plays there from Nico. Up against Tennessee, which is one of the better secondaries in the league. So we'll see if they want to establish a run again this week, but we're going to have Nick Chubb listed as a meh. We don't feel very safe or comfortable with him. And then Woody Marks as well. We do have ranked this week, but he's going to be a sit for sure. He actually had 6 carries to Nick Chubb's 9, and he got 48% snap share. He's usually just there for passing down snaps and hasn't been getting as much opportunity as we would like. But that is another backfield where, like, if Joe Mixon ends up being out for much longer than expected, we haven't heard a thing from that. Rest of the season, you might be looking at Woody Marks kind of breathing down Nick Chubb's neck as well and potentially take over that role. But he will be a sit this week. Not feeling good about Houston's backfield.
The New England-Carolina game starts with Chuba Hubbard in the C tier here. It's a decent matchup for both these teams, exactly middle of the road in the league in terms of allowing points to running backs, so not necessarily concerned about this. In terms of the Vegas lights for this game as well, less favorable for Carolina in this game, a little bit better for New England in terms of how they project. Pretty much yellows across the board here, and so really, you're just going to default to what you've seen so far from these backs this season. Chuba is a C-tier guy. He's a start this week for us. Rico Dowdle is going to be somebody that's in the I tier, not starting him. Although, something we do have to monitor is Rico Dowdle, how much he continues to kind of eat into the red zone work for Chuba Hubbard. He did have 40% snap share last week against Atlanta, the most of his season, and he had a touchdown. And so you look at Rico Dowdle, and you're going to keep an eye on that, but he is not somebody you can start yet. And then on the New England side of the ball, again, this got interesting last week because Ramondre had fumble issues, which is not new, by the way.
And Gibson did as well.
And Gibson had a fumble as well. And so, Ramondre had 2 fumbles lost against Pittsburgh. He only ended up playing 36% of the snaps. And so when you're looking at TreVeyon Henderson, what I want from this game, my ideal outcome here would be for TreVeyon to get all the snaps. He had 46% snaps, so he outsnapped Ramondre. Had 11 attempts, didn't do much with him, but had 3 targets, 3 receptions.
This is his time.
In an ideal world, they would give TreVeyon Henderson the ball a lot this week, and he would become a start. What I think is probably going to happen is they're going to roll out Ramondre. They're going to act like nothing ever happened, and they're going to play TreVeyon like they have been.
It's just the dumbest thing of all
It's dumb. I think you know how we
it.
feel about that, but regardless, I think that's what's going to happen. And so for these Patriots, Ramondre is going to be in the F tier and Henderson in the F tier. Both of them are miss. Like, you don't really want to start either one of them until one of them proves that they've got a grip on that backfield, and I don't know how soon that's going to happen. With TreVeyon, TreVeyon's not putting up startable, productive fantasy numbers right now. 11, 6, and 7 points in his first 3 weeks. You don't want that in your flex spots. And Ramondre, while he had that 21-point outburst against Miami in week 2, 4 points in week 1 and 4 points in week 3, and so you never know when you're going to get that. And so really what we're looking at with these guys on the New England offense in this backfield is they're not really reliable flex options right now. So if you have these guys, I would recommend putting them on your bench. Again, they're shakier starts if you need to put them in your flex spot. Gibson is somebody we don't have ranked. The matchups are fine, but the backfield is what we're worried about there. So really the only guy I'm comfortable in this matchup starting and telling you to start is Chuba. Everybody else is going to be pretty shaky here.
So the Chargers and Giants, this is Omarion Hampton's coming out party. Actually, last week was because Najee went down with that injury, and he popped off 25 points. Going up against the New York Giants, who have allowed the 4th most amount of points to running backs this season. I would expect that to continue this week as Hampton is the certified official bell cow. Nobody else there is going to take anything away from him. Hassan Haskins is now the new running back 2 there. We know exactly how the Chargers feel about Hassan Haskins. They tried so hard to short Hampton with Najee Harris in there, and now they have no choice but to just roll out Hampton for the entire game. And that is just awesome for all y'all Hampton owners. So expect a big week from him. We got him in the A tier and a great matchup. Cam Scatterby, on the other hand, I wouldn't count on another 25-point week. It's very possible, though. In a tough matchup against the Chiefs last week on Sunday Night Football, he had 25 when Tyron Tracy went down with that injury. Tracy obviously out for the foreseeable future, probably like 2 to 4 weeks-ish. And Devin Singletary is now the new backup there. In the H tier, he did get a little bit of usage, but he's just not nearly as explosive or good or solid as Cam Scatterby is in the limited opportunity that he got in the first couple of weeks. And Cam Scatterby, I think, is going to be the certified bell cow at this point. So with that volume alone that we're counting on from Scat, we are going to have him as a start in the D tier, though, a couple tiers lower than a guy like Hampton just because of the matchup. It's tough to produce against that Chargers front. So we'll see what happens there. He definitely has a lower floor than some other bell cow running backs this week, but I would still be optimistic that he'll be able to not screw you. I think he looks really good right now with that receiving usage. he might raise his floor a little bit.
In the Philadelphia-Tampa Bay game, which is going to be a pretty good game, by the way, I think, from a watching perspective, because if Tampa Bay gets up on Philly's going to have to pass the ball like they did last week, and they're actually decent to watch when that happens. So I would love for it to be where I could watch Philly this week and not be bored out of my freaking mind and falling asleep.
Yeah.
On the Philly side of the ball, though, you have Saquon Barkley in the S tier. Look, Saquon's really not been able to get it going by Saquon standards this year. This is yellow lights all across the board. It's yellow for offense. The matchup is going to be yellow, so they're both average. The Vegas is going to be yellow. They're both projected a decent amount of points, but also some decent defenses in this matchup. And so, Saquon S tier, nothing changes with this. You're starting him every single week. A.J. Dillon's not somebody you're starting in this offense as well. And then on the Tampa Bay side of the ball, Bucky Irving, you're going to continue to start Bucky Irving. He's in the B tier for us. It's a tougher matchup for Bucky, but realistically, Bucky has shown some very encouraging things, I think, in terms of some of his volume this season. Bucky Irving right now is averaging 4.7 targets per game, and among running backs, that's 6th in the NFL. And so I love to see that from Bucky so far. He's, so far this year is averaging 73% of snaps in that offense. He still does, even after the Rachaad White outburst we saw in week 2, look like he has that backfield on lockdown. So you feel very good about starting him. He's still a premier running back to start in fantasy football. And Rachaad White, on the other hand, like I said, we're going to put him in the G tier. And realistically, even though you did see that one game with Rachaad White where he was like, oh, maybe Rachaad White is going to, get some more work here. They followed it up where Rachaad White had 2.4 points the next week, pretty much in the same amount of snap shares, but they gave him half the carries, and he didn't have a touchdown, didn't have any long runs. And so it's been kind of a mixed bag with Rachaad White, and because of that, Bucky Irving has continued to be the most productive guy in that offense. So B tier for Bucky Irving, G tier for Rachaad White, in a matchup that, like I said, I hope the watchability is through the roof on this one, and I hope Philly actually passes the ball.
Jacksonville and San Fran. This is Mac Jones' old team from last year. Mac Jones, I think, is probably going to be starting this week. It's kind of fringe TBD with Brock Purdy, but CMC S tier. CMC, fun fact, has only had one receiving touchdown to date so far, and he's got 20-plus points in every single game.
He had 15 targets last week.
15 targets. I mean, you're looking at legit, once these touchdowns start flowing,
30-plus
points per game.
Yep.
Yeah. Like 2019 Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
Just stay healthy. Just stay healthy, man. S tier. Tougher matchup against Jacksonville. They've actually allowed the 4th least amount of points to running backs this season, but that ain't going to stop CMC. Brian Robinson, will respect him, put him in the I tier. He gets some touches pretty much every single game. Had a couple of explosive runs last week. You're not starting him. He's irrelevant. Bashal Tutin is in the G tier, the backup to Travis Etienne. We're going to be obviously definitely starting Travis Etienne. Just because of that volume, he remains continually productive. It's also a tough matchup on the Jacksonville side as well. You're looking at San Fran allowing the 7th least amount of points to running backs this season in fantasy. So do I think Etienne's going to have the ceiling that he has in some other weeks this week? Not necessarily, but that volume alone is going to pretty much solidify his status as a must-start in the C tier this week. Bashal Tutin salvaged his day last week with a touchdown, but the reason he's in the G tier is because his volume and his snap share and his touches went down significantly, which is not something you wanted to see for a guy who looks very explosive, looks very good every time he touches the ball. It's probably just going to take a little bit of time before he starts significantly eating into Etienne's workload.
The running back one in fantasy football right now has a tough matchup this week. Jonathan Taylor is going to be in the S tier, though, because, again, he's the running back one in fantasy football over Christian McCaffrey, who is insane right now. And with JT, I mean, I misspoke earlier. I said the Browns have allowed the least amount of points to running backs. They've actually allowed the 2nd least amount of points. The Los Angeles Rams, have allowed the least points to running backs in fantasy so far this year. So this is a very tough matchup.
Yep.
And I think part of this is who the Rams have played so far. But even with that being said, I mean, they just played Saquon Barkley. They still hold that title. So, I don't think you can argue at this point.
That's a little bit of hope for me this week.
Yeah, because Nathan's got JT matchup in the Flock League this week, and so you hope that JT doesn't pop off. But realistically, I mean, you can't not rank this guy in the S tier. It's Jonathan freaking Taylor.
Yeah.
And so you got to start him. It's tough. DJ Giddens not ranked in this matchup. On the other side of the ball for the Los Angeles Rams, it's obviously you're starting Kyren Williams. He's got him in the B tier. The Colts have been middle of the road against the run this year, so it's not really going to be an overly tough matchup for Kyren Williams. And even if it is, you just saw him go against the Philadelphia Eagles, drop 19 points, have a touchdown called back. He really should have had 25 points in that game. And so with Kyren, I think Kyren's kind of a must-start every week right now. We've got him in the B tier. Again, the lights for the Rams here, yellow on offense. Matchup is yellow as well. The Vegas line, however, when you're looking at the Vegas line for the Rams, is green in this game, which, again, I think puts Kyren had a pretty good shot of getting a touchdown this week. I'm not really worried about Blake Corum vulturing that touchdown every week. I think it's going to be probably Kyren. And so that's obviously what he does best. He's somebody you're going to throw in your lineup for that reason. Both of these starting running backs you're going to throw into your lineup, but JT definitely has the tougher matchup than Kyren in this Indianapolis-Los Angeles matchup.
Matchup of the week, maybe Baltimore and Kansas City. I honestly don't know how entertaining it'll be because Kansas City just hates scoring points right now. But Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are both sharing spots in the G tier. I mean, these guys are so difficult to watch when they're on the field, and it literally just comes down to who's getting the red zone and the goal line carries. And Kareem Hunt was the guy that was able to bring one home last week against the Giants in a matchup where you really would have expected one of them to be like decently productive. Kareem Hunt finished with 11 points. And Isaiah Pacheco, who continues to just look awful, had 5 points. So both of them are, I mean, you're looking at an even carry split. The snap share gives a little bit of a nod to Pacheco. But again, the one that's actually producing more right now is Kareem Hunt. It's just really ugly in that backfield. We're going to list both of them as mez. This is not a backfield that you want to have a share in right now. This is not a backfield that hopefully you invested in to begin the season. But again, if you have one of them and you're forced to start one of them, it's not looking super pretty for either. On the bright side, Baltimore has allowed the most amount of points to running backs, which is why we're even listing both of these guys as mez, because the reason they're mez is we don't know who's going to produce. If any of the weeks of the season, one of these guys would have a really solid game, it would be this week against Baltimore because they have not figured out the run. You saw that against Gibbs and Monty last week. Derrick Henry in the A tier. We brought him down from the S tier because he's had a slow couple of weeks. Obviously, been struggling with some fumbles as well that have been pretty significant fumbles. They took him out of the game on like some critical drives last week against the Lions, which I honestly don't really understand, but he's still going to be in the A tier. He still gets plenty of volume. They're still giving him all those goal line carries. He's honestly kind of just been unlucky. The Cleveland, they got a couple of stops, and then last week against the Lions, like, I mean, you saw those goal line touches. Yeah. It was like, what? They were stopping everything on like 2 different drives.
I love how he's like, I'm Derrick Henry, and then he gets to the goal line, he's like,
yeah, and then he almost threw a pick because they tried to do like the King Henry, getting a touchdown pass, and that didn't work either. So still going to be in the A tier. This is a bit more of a friendly matchup against Kansas City, who's kind of middle of the pack when it comes to running back production. Justice Hill, even though he kind of salvaged his day with some big receiving plays at the end of the game, he's not a relevant guy. He's going to be in the J tier.
I will say it is funny that you always start with the bottom matchup on our sheet, but I know it drives Becca freaking crazy, but it's like you're dyslexic or something. You cannot help it.
I don't know why.
You always start with the bottom.
Do I do that every time?
Yes, dude, every time. He always starts and goes backwards.
I'll try to stop myself.
All right, we'll see if he does it. We'll see if he does it. Yeah. Chicago versus Las Vegas here. We'll start with Swifty. Swifty continues to get good volume. He played last week, even though he was a little bit banged up. And he got 61% of the snaps there, 13 attempts, 4 targets, 10 points. DeAndre Swift, like, you can literally bet all of your income that he's going to finish between running back 20 and running back 24 in fantasy football, because he's literally done it every year of his career. Yeah. He got to running back 19 last year, and it was like a change. You're like, oh, interesting. But the last, literally since he started his career, like 18, 15, 21, 20, 19, and 23 so far. Like, I mean, he is always right there.
Just when you're out on DeAndre Swift and so done with him, he goes on a tear for like 6 weeks to salvage the season.
Yeah, and then
it's usually
and then
a stretch, and then he doesn't do anything. So
Swifty's in the D tier. He's going to be a start for us. Not a bad matchup for Swifty this week. Monungai's not ranked for us in our rankings this week. And then Las Vegas. Look, a lot of you guys are going to be asking about Genty, and Genty has to be moved down here, right? I mean, right now, right now at least, I'm not going to jump the gun here, but now it looks like he's Bijan from Bijan's rookie year, which is highly unfortunate.
The differences are actually giving him like 15 to 20 carries, which is good.
And that is good because he had 17 carries for 63 yards. It's just really, you haven't seen the touchdowns. The lack of targets there kind of does suck, to be honest with you. He only has 6 targets on the season. And so, 2 a game's not going to cut it for Ashton Genty to be the running back, the top 6 running back that you drafted him to be in fantasy football. He's going to be in the C tier. He's in the tier with guys like Travis Etienne, Chuba Hubbard's in that tier as well, and so Alvin Kamara, Javonte. So that's where you have to rank him, and honestly, it may be a little bit generous until we see him actually produce, and so we'll see. It is a good matchup for Genty, though. The Bears have allowed the 6th most amount of points to fantasy football running backs this year, and so with that being said, I think you have to start Genty. It sucks, but he's going to be a start for us. The other two running backs in this matchup are going to be sits. I think Swift and Genty are both good flex options for this week, although most of you guys are starting Genty and you're starting running back slot still, and I feel very sorry for you. But
the Micah Parsons revenge game, everybody's going to be watching this game. I honestly don't know how competitive it's actually going to be. Probably going to be one-sided and low scoring, but Josh Jacobs, I would expect him to bounce back, honestly, this week after he just went up against Cleveland, had a 12-pointer, wasn't able to punch the ball into the end zone, but again, just because he's Josh Jacobs, he was able to salvage his day and he didn't screw you, which is why we were telling you have to start Josh Jacobs last week anyways. Going up against Dallas this week, which is just, they've been really struggling all season with their defense. I guess that's what happens when you let Micah Parsons go or just run your franchise like Jerry does. But Jacobs, A tier, he's going to be solid. Nobody else behind him is rankable. Javonte Williams, we just mentioned him. Another guy in the C tier who had a okay game last week, but it wasn't nearly as great as what he did in the first 2 weeks. 12 points, so he also salvaged his day against Chicago in a game where they just got totally blown out. I would expect, honestly, them to continue to lean on Javonte even a little bit more now that CeeDee Lamb is out of that offense. They're not going to have as explosive of a passing offense as they have with him healthy, obviously. So Javonte Williams, I honestly would say, even in a matchup against Green Bay where it might be like he's not going to have the upside that he usually is going to have every single week, I still think he'll have a fine day because Miles Sanders ain't eating into that workload. Jaden Blue is just healthy scratch here and there. He's the full-fledged bell cow workload running back there.
Interesting about Josh Jacobs, he is, in terms of expected fantasy points under actual fantasy points under what's expected, he's third in the league. Christian McCaffrey's actually first, which is crazy to think
no
about.
Touchdowns, yeah.
And then Chase Brown, and then Josh Jacobs. And so Jacobs really he's averaging 13.6 points per game right now. His expected would be around 16.
Yeah, that's why we had him listed as a buy.
You've got to be kind of aggressive with starting Jacobs. He's going to get those touchdowns just like he did last year. You're going to see the exact same thing happen.
Yep.
New York and Miami here. Breece Hall. Look, Breece had a great first week. I thought he looked really, really good. And then he was like, you know what? Being good's overrated. I'm just going to be mid again. And honestly, one of the main things you've seen with Breece, I mean, he's not cracked 30 yards in his last 2 games, is the snap share, or so the attempts have continued to go down. 19 attempts in week 1, 10 in week 2, and then against Tampa Bay, 9. Like, he did have 6 targets against Tampa, but still, like, he's the running back 25 in the season. Like, I don't know. He can't. I thought he was going to get it going. He does have a good matchup this week. Miami has allowed the 5th most amount of points to fantasy football running backs this year. He does have a good matchup this week. Miami has allowed the 5th most amount of points to fantasy football running backs this year, and so we'll see if he can get it going. But Braylon Allen, I mean, the reason people were shorting Breece was because of Braylon Allen. In reality, if you were going to short Breece, it should have been because of Breece, evidently, because Braylon Allen's done nothing. He's a running back 50 on the year, and so you can't start him. He's a sit for us this week in the I tier. On the other side of the ball, you got to start Devon Achane. A tier, I mean, bad offense, continues to produce. I don't know what else you want to see from Devon Achane. Ollie Gordon in the H tier, he continues to be a nice handcuff. He did have 9 points last week because he had a touchdown, but wouldn't expect that every week. It's a Jets matchup. It's decent in terms of running backs scoring against them. So both these guys, I mean, again, Breece Hall and Devon Achane, the A and B tier respectively for these guys. You do have to start them both in your fantasy football lineups this week.
Look, since he is not going to be playing Minnesota every single week, but that being said, it still is looking really, really ugly offensively there. Chase Brown is going to be in the D tier this week, and what is really a friendly matchup, honestly, against Denver. They've allowed the 10th most amount of points to running backs, so not nearly as brutal of a matchup as it was against Minnesota. Chase Brown's the bell cow there. We'll see how much they want to implement Taj Brooks. We have him ranked in the I tier. He's obviously a sit, but we'll still start Chase Brown this week if you have to. You're obviously a little bit worried, but I do think just with the opportunity alone, you just got to hope he punches it into the end zone and is going to be fine. J.K. Dobbins, C tier. He keeps saving his days, salvaging his weeks with big play touchdowns, just big plays overall. He's scored like 15 points every single week so far. And as long as he continues that, like, we have to rank him accordingly. In a matchup against Cincinnati this week, this is why he's in the C tier. He'd be a tier lower if it weren't for going up against Cincinnati, who's allowed the 2nd most amount of points to running backs this season. And then RJ Harvey, who's honestly, his snap share has gone up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. He's in the F tier. He still is a start, but he's not irrelevant. He is going to continue to get touches and opportunities that hopefully increase over time. But against Cincinnati, like, he's probably not going to produce unless he gets some breakaway run and salvages his day that way. You're not comfortable about starting him. So
again, that's every single running back. Hopefully this helps you set your lineups for week 4. Do us a huge favor if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you would. It supports the channel, and that way you can join what we're doing here at Domain, and you can also get these videos every single week. You turn on noties, you get them right when we come out, and you can set your lineups. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you later.